Okay, awesome. Here we go. So, hi, and welcome back to episode 10 of Still I Rise podcast. And I am thrilled and delighted to have Jay Chambers here chatting with me today. We had a quick conversation there, Jay, about how I was going to introduce you. And we said poet and dub artist.
hmm
But then you actually said some really interesting stuff with work that you're doing at the minute. Be really cool if you want to share that here as well to
Yeah.
open up.
So I'm doing a bit of work with a Manchester institution that has found out that it has financially benefited from the enslavement of African people. And so they brought in myself and a bunch of other Black creatives to generate some work around the theme of reparation or restorative justice. And so how we got to this was talking about introductions. Introductions are always really funny because I wear so many hats. You know, I've been an academic, a dub poet, I'm also a musician, an artist. So yeah, I just feel like introducing myself as a human sometimes because I'm like, it's difficult when there's so many things you do.
That's it. And I kind of feel like we are conditioned to nearly have your work life and then have your personal life and be this different person. But
Mm,
actually, when it comes down to it, especially when you're working with purpose, it's so intertwined. And I feel like certainly in the work that you do, and we will talk about that because I can't wait, is looking at your own legacy and your family and your ancestors and how we show up in nature and connection and community. And it's so
100%.
fascinating because like for me, it's like, why would I show up as a different person? I'll show up in a different sense in different ways. But so you sent me this book. You sent me two copies actually.
Yeah.
And I was reading it again yesterday actually, because it was going through, it's a book of poetry. It's really, really deep for me because there was so many things that I could relate to. I'm Irish, and your heritage is Jamaican.
hmm
And so the intersectionality between the Irish and the Jamaican, which has always kind of existed.
Yeah.
Um, and so I wondered for people who haven't read your book, is it out yet or is this still pre-sale?
So it's still pre-sale. It's out on the 27th, which I think is next week. I've got so much going on this month. I think it's next week or the week after. We're doing a small event in Manchester to celebrate the launch. But yeah, it's available for pre-order on my website as well.
Okay, perfect. So it's out on the 27th. Um, how would you describe it in your own words?
So for me, Homecoming the Journal is a reflective piece of work. So with Homecoming, it's a 360 project. So initially it started off as an album. I was fortunate enough in 2023 to return to Jamaica to go and create my album. And I was so lucky I got embraced by the scene out there and was able to record in Bob Marley's studio, Tough Gong. I did 8 songs in 7 hours there. I recorded in Freddie McGregor's studio, Big Ship. I worked with Frankie Music, who's a Grammy-winning producer out there, and we also went to Tad's studio, which is like a legendary reggae studio, like where Tanya Stevens and Kamar Fire work out of, and it was just amazing to go home and really ground myself and like stand outside of the home that my grandparents first owned together and like see where I come from as a human. So the album reflected that. I also made a short film about it whilst I was out there. And I always knew with this project that I wanted to have the short film and the album as a piece of work to inspire people of Caribbean descent, but not just people of Caribbean descent, I guess, like people of other heritage, whether it's Irish, Scottish, Welsh, Spanish, whatever, but to go home and see where our heritage is because so much of it gets lost unless like we embrace it. So with that, I had the idea of then creating something after the release of those projects that allowed me to really reflect because so much of the nature of those two projects were collaborative that I actually wanted to be quite selfish and have something that was just for me. And so that was what the book was. It was my reflection on the journey of going home and sharing it in a way that I hope it inspires people of all ages to really explore who they are on a deeper level because so much of our identity is beyond what we see in the mirror.
Hmm. Do you think we have lost parts of our identity with the way the world is now?
100%. Like we're in a society that teaches us to conform, that teaches us to want socializes us, I should say, to want to be like everybody else. And actually, there's so much more of a superpower of just embracing who you are and exploring that on a deeper level and a deeper frequency. And it's funny that I had my own journey with this. Like within my music, I started out making hip hop first, and then I transitioned more to reggae. And it was one of my friends actually was like, "Yo, bro, you like your family are reggae musicians. You have that in your lineage. Why isn't that something that you're incorporating?" And I did a song called 218 with my cousin Too Nice, who was a singer and MC from London, who sadly passed away when we finished that song. But then releasing that song made me want to delve deeper into that and just kind of pick up the mantle where he left off. And then here we are.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to hear about your cousin.
It's fine. Thank you though.
No
Yeah,
problem.
it's a weird thing. Like heritage is just so important. And I think a lot of the confusion and a lot of, I guess, the self-esteem issues that we sometimes face is from that lack of understanding of who we are. Because once you have that understanding of who you are, there's a pride within it.
Mm. Did you ever push back on your heritage, Jay?
Yeah, so I remember like when I was younger, my upbringing was interesting. So I was born in Old Trafford, which is primarily Caribbean, African Caribbean, and I think a Bangladeshi community. But then my parents moved me up to Blakely, which was the polar opposite of that. It was primarily white working class, and this was in the 90s. So there's like horrific racism. And so for a lot of my schooling, it was about kind of making myself small just to get through. And then it was in high school, really, where I kind of started studying. It was my mum, she gave me the autobiography of Malcolm X and started making me read all of this black literature. And it was like that, then embracing my identity became my superpower because I had this spark of understanding who I am and knowing that, even though the circumstances that I was facing at school were, I guess, difficult, that there was a pride of knowing that once I'm through that, things can be so much bigger.
Do you think that has changed much for Black global majority, not white children across the UK now?
Yes and no. I think in some contexts it has done because obviously with black culture has become I guess like social currency. You've seen it being used in every facet. And I feel like yes, it's been embraced because there is a lot of awareness, but I also think like institutional whiteness is still the default. So when you're walking into these spaces, whether it be education, at primary, secondary, college, or university level, that is the default. So you're always positioned as other. And also, what I noticed throughout my journey and within my work within universities as well is that there is that duality of when there's a success or things that are going well for students of, I guess, global majority backgrounds, there is celebration of that diversity up until a point where it becomes problematic, where I guess like our white colleagues have to challenge their perceptions of that person's lived identity or their beliefs about that person's culture. And then that's when things start to get difficult.
Mm. Because it's what I kind of find is it's so much harder unlearning your
Yeah.
own white supremacy. And like now, I just feel like I am so hypersensitive to my whiteness. Whereas like 15 years ago, I never even noticed I was white. It's a really interesting question I love using in like workshops and training sessions, like for white people. When did you actually notice your race? And it's such a key part of like no one does. I didn't notice like that I was white until really recently within the last couple of years. And
Yeah.
that kind of feeds into that whole like how white is the default. Like women of color, white is
Mm.
still a color, but because of white supremacy, straight away it's like, well, I'm not the other. I'm the
Yeah.
the main. And white people hate talking about it.
It's so
Like it's
interesting.
white.
What really trips me up as well is like with the work that I do, I pull no punches about that. And so like there is this awakening within some facets of society where people want to discuss whiteness, like whiteness as a construct only came around roughly around 1619. And so it's like I think that now that we're having this awareness and there's more sharing of information, there are people that want to explore that. But there also is that defense mechanism. I guess, like if you've been conditioned to think your identity is the global default, then there is going to be a level of unlearning that is required. And I think that there needs to be that approach of humility to get to that point. And I feel like there is so much reluctance to do that because then it's like once you're unpicking, I guess, like whiteness, you're then having to unpick like for my case, like being in England for British people, British identity, what does that mean? Colonialism, imperialism. And then there's all of these difficult reckonings with what things that you've been conditioned to be proud of actually mean and what the impact for other cultures were of those things. And yeah, it's really fascinating.
Yeah, and actually, I've had this conversation with some British friends about what is British culture.
Mhm.
So, what is British culture for you?
For me, I guess for me, British culture would be the melting pot of these different identities that have been brought here. But then the undertone of that melting pot is then overstanding the colonialism and imperialism that brought us here. And you can't have one without the other. Like, for example, within Manchester, we celebrate, I'm not going to say we because I don't, but it's celebrated that it was the largest processor of cotton. There are tower blocks called Cotton Tower and Cottonopolis, and there's names of like slave owners on mills and things like that. And people just take that as surface, being like, oh yeah, because we were the largest processor of cotton in the Industrial Revolution, and this is amazing. This is what, revitalized Manchester. And then that when you actually challenge people and be like, yeah, that's cool that you were processing cotton, but where did the cotton come from? Who had to bear the burden of that, how many people died, and like reasoning with people about these things. That's where the defensiveness comes in. So I'd say for me, British identity is the cultural melting pot, but at the price of, I guess, global majority colonies.
Mm. And so, whenever you think of like British food,
Hmm.
I mean, it's all intertwined, isn't it? Because I can't think of a British food that's only from England. Can you?
It's so jarring. Yeah, there's not like where
Maybe
was
there
it?
is.
It was like we were in Jamaica and we were talking about this because like some of the musicians I was working with were cussing, saying that how they can't get any decent food in Britain, so they often travel with things and cook there in it. And so we are talking about like I think the defaults are like fish and chips. I think like beef Wellington, but I don't really eat meat, so that's not a thing that really appeals to me. And I think it's that. It's like even overstanding that, the foods that we have traditionally are staples that fit into people's life and dietary requirements, but also some of the more exciting things that we have, like have come from other places. Like I read somewhere that one of the British dishes now are curries, and it's like curries don't come from here. They come from India. And it's like
Yeah.
like unpicking that. And I think that a lot of the bigoted people that we see online just need to have a reckoning with that and figuring out, what their heritage means. It's funny. I did a post about the Bob Dylan situation on TikTok, and it got quite a lot of views, and all of the gammons came out and they were trying to give me gripe about like British heritage and like being ashamed to be British. And it's like, I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm a Black British person of Jamaican heritage. But then at the same time, it's like, again, unpicking what being British means for you and, who paid the price of that. And there seems to be this utter reluctance to kind of address that. And I feel that's where a lot of the fractious relationships between communities happen because, you can't, restorative means to repair, and to repair something means an acknowledgement of what has been broken. So to get to that place, you have to acknowledge what has been broken or where the breakdown was in order to rebuild something back that's stronger, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I wonder, if this was taught in school, like if identity was taught in school to kids under 10, would we ever be able to break this cycle of segregation, of oppression? Because it is oppression, like it is the way
Mm,
these people are coming out and the way they're getting supported by the systems.
mm.
It's quite terrifying actually the way the world is going. But I do think it was always kind of like this, but do we have more access to what's going on? Do we have more resources to do it? So that was class. That went completely off piece there. But what inspired you then to write the book now?
I think for me, it was what inspired me to write the book. I don't actually know. I think for me, it was coming back from Jamaica, releasing the album, seeing the creation, seeing the conversation that it allowed people to facilitate around culture and heritage, and how many, I guess, like third or fourth generation Jamaicans are wanting to reclaim their heritage and, applying for citizenship back to Jamaica. So that we have the option to repatriate, but also to keep that connection alive. Because for most of us, when our parents or our grandparents transition onto their next phase, that link dies. And so it's important to keep it. And so the more I kind of reflected on it, I was like, I want to create something that allows this conversation to take place, but also for younger people, like the language that I used within the poems have been pitched in a particular way that it's accessible for all ages. And I did a litmus test with it. So when I first got the copies, there's a primary school in Manchester that have a year group named after me. It was basically after the
Oh.
I led one of the Black Lives Matter protests in Manchester, one of the big ones, and then I went on Blue Peter and did a poem about it called Letter to My Younger Self, and this primary school loved it, and I went in and wrote the poem on the wall for the kids as part of this Black History Month corridor, and I've kept a close relationship with this school. And I took the book there and I gave it to some of the teachers, and the teachers were like, this is a perfect resource for us to explore culture and heritage with. And so I'm in conversations with other distribution networks now about getting it into more schools and colleges just to help facilitate that conversation because whilst there is a lot of literature that exists about identity and culture, I think one, schools don't have the links to find the literature that exists. Two, I think teachers aren't necessarily comfortable with facilitating those conversations. So anything that uses creativity and art or like photography as a medium of offering this point of reflection offers a gentler way, I guess, for them to explore some of those subjects in a way that younger minds can understand.
Totally. And from what I got from it, like it is really, you could be reading your child this at 4 years old because you're right. Like it's the way the writing flows and even the illustrations and the photographs, like it just gives it's like a tool for asking questions and for starting questions. And yeah, no, and I feel like Jamaica's a character in it. Like I feel like
Hmm.
Jamaica's this queen. Like that's
Yeah.
what came across for me.
It was like because so much of like Caribbean culture is matriarchal. So like, refer to Jamaica as a motherland, and for
Mm.
many of us it's our grandparents, particularly a lot of my friends, it's our grandmothers. And so like when I think of Jamaica, I think of, wise, elder female energy. And I'm glad that that came through in the book.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because my son read it. He's 12, he's nearly 13. His heritage is Congolese.
Oh,
So he's
cool.
a black boy living in, have you ever been in Ireland?
Yeah,
North or
I've
south?
so I've been both. So I spent some time in Buncrana, but then also I have friends in Dublin, so I've been there. I was there a few weeks ago actually.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So but you haven't been in Belfast?
Belfast. Have I been in Belfast? Yeah, I have been in Belfast.
Yeah. It's very white, even compared
Yeah.
with Dublin. Like it's a really interesting place. Um, because of post-conflict
Hmm.
society and it's still so sectarian.
Yeah,
And
that was what
so
fascinated me about the different areas where people live and how communities are gated from each other and things like that. It's like a different world.
it is so wild. And like I'm in Dublin at the minute, and Dublin has its everywhere has its own issues at the minute. But Dublin, even when you go out, whenever you walk down the street, like it
Mm.
is more diverse to look at. Like there are different identities, different races, ethnicities, faiths, and that's great. So it is kind of more normalized here. In the north, I just feel like it's so backward, Jay. Like I feel like there's this mindset of there's only two things, and it's white Catholic or
Mhm.
white Protestant, and anything beyond that is just too much and isn't wanted and isn't welcome. Um, and so I always said before that, if we can navigate inclusion, awareness properly, we could avoid kind of the issues that happen in the US and that happen in England. But honestly, it's the last couple of years with all the like anti-immigration
Mm,
stuff going on and racism stuff going on and more things that I see and that my son experiences, it's like yeah, it's a shithole. Like I really don't like it. I'm really angry at Belfast at the minute because we should know better. Like we grew up
yeah.
during a war, and there's so much pushback and you know there's so much institutional racism as well that goes on, and yeah,
That
it's
that's something that fascinates me because like obviously like Ireland was colonized by the British, right? And so like it's always fascinated me how then that mentality trickles down to then you wanting to get rid of other people when if like doing unto others that has been done to you, I don't understand it. Like it really confused me. And when I arrived in Ireland, I did notice like I've been to Belfast, I think 3 times. First 2 times I flew, sorry, but the last time, the most recent time I drove, I took the Stena line, which was a whole other thing. 8 hours of my life gone.
Oh
But
my
it was
God,
really
no.
funny, like noticing people, noticing like a big black Rasta guy on the Stena line, everyone be like, who's he and where's he going? Like you immediately felt that. And it was interesting, like just observing that energy and seeing, because sometimes some looks can be out of curiosity, but then also there was a lot of looks that felt like, yo, you just shouldn't be here.
It's so wild. Do you know the poem You Can't Be Irish and Racist by Imelda May? I'm sure you do.
No, I've not heard it.
Oh
Please
wow.
send
Do
it
you
me.
know who Imelda May is?
No.
She is this amazing singer and she's an activist and she's so her voice is so powerful. So she wrote a poem during lockdown,
Yeah.
during Black Square summer, like that year. And it was all about you can't be racist in Irish and all about the Irish being colonized and the Irish emigrating, and it was really, really powerful. And it always comes back to that for me, where we have these people who are really like, there's a whole thing about flags as well.
Mm,
And I don't know if it's the same in England. I guess it is to an extent, but in the north of Ireland, so flags are everything. Like I wouldn't wear a tricolour, definitely not ever. Like if I'm ever in a so I'm Catholic.
hmm
I am Irish. I was born in Dublin, but I would identify as Irish anyway.
hmm
But whenever I go into a loyalist area where there's like Union Jacks, there's also a lot of Israeli flags now in those
I,
in those areas.
I saw that.
Uh, not fun. I automatically will lock the doors of my car. Automatically. No one can tell who I am, what I am, but it's just that it's nearly ingrained, I think. I have
Mm,
never really actually no, I probably have experienced sectarianism, but not to the point where I was physically hurt.
yeah.
Um, it's funny when we think back of like, having these conversations as well, what we thought was normal. Like I was
Yeah.
about to say there, I don't think I ever really experienced sectarianism, but like we used to have to go into town and go through the army to get in to go to boots. Like it was,
Mad.
yeah, like, and that was in the 90s and it was so normal. So like I remember whenever we'd go into town to mum, like you had to go through a security checkpoint. And my dad worked away loads. So like even going up to the airport, the army would stop us and have to go through, like look through the car and look in the boot. Like I'm one of 7 kids. My mum
Mm,
was coming up on her own with 7 kids, all in the back. And it's only actually since I saw what was going on in Palestine and there, like the fear my mum must have had going through all of that.
yeah, with
And
7 kids as well. That must have been really scary for her.
isn't it so nuts? But the
Yeah.
worst thing was, like, we would be like throwing shade at her. Like, we would be like, why is mum so rude to those men? Like, that is so. And now you kind of get it. But in Ireland, so whenever you get your ashes, you get
Mm.
like, well, Ash Wednesday was the day that, like, literally you would get called dirty everything in the street because, like, dirty Catholics can't wash. Have you ever heard of that?
Mad. No, that's mad.
And now I know, and I was literally about to say to you, no, it's never been, or like, when you got the bus, like your school. So 93% of education here is still segregated religiously.
Wow.
So yeah, so your uniform is like your religion. So like in
Mm,
the 90s, you just wouldn't go through certain areas in your uniform because you would just get beat up, like you couldn't do it. So like the Protestant school a wee bit down the road from where we went to grammar school, like the buses just wouldn't stop, like they'd just go on, and if you did go onto the bus you would just get, they used to throw bottles and all. Like now I am unlocking all these memories, Jay, it's so wild. But and it's still there, like, because we don't see it as much doesn't mean that it's not there. And then I kind of got on it through flags, so now you see, especially in the south, you see these like anti-immigration people that, I mean, people call them the racism riots, but like they're
mm,
white supremacy riots, and they're wearing like their tricolor suits and their tricolor hats, and it's like, don't associate our flag with
mm,
this, because as you were saying, like when you look back at our history and at our oppression and our colonization, like you literally cannot be Irish and racist. And it's something that I would love to know why people think like that. And I'm actually thinking of setting up an incognito Facebook profile and joining the far right groups just to understand where it comes from.
That would be interesting to do. I think like a lot of the times, like when in my brief foray of dealing with idiots on TikTok, like
Mm,
when I've had a look at them, like a lot of the times it's people blaming like I guess like the cost of living crisis or things being expensive or jobs not paying as much as they should for people to have like a decent standard of living on people who are fleeing like lands that are being torn apart by conflict and coming over for a safer life. They're blaming these people more often than not, whose mother countries are being bombed by the countries that they're fleeing to anyway. So it's kind of like it makes no sense to hate them for doing that when you're causing the problem that's causing them to come here. But also, it's them looking for an easy target. Like it's so much easier to blame migrants for the fact that you can't afford to live the life that you once did because of inflation rather than going and actually blaming your politician or challenging the status quo or challenging these positions of power. Like a lot of the inequality that exists is often flaunted in our faces, like, and we just
mm,
accept it. But then somehow it's easier to blame the man, woman, and child that's fleeing a war zone than it is to go and challenge your local MP and your local politician. It's so goofy to me. And it's like, when you try and challenge these bigoted people, like often their arguments fall down. So like there was one guy, often I don't entertain the racism, but I had time. It was actually when I was in Dublin, I posted the video of me responding about the Bob Villain thing. And then one guy was like, oh, here he comes with a black card and a or race card or whatever. And I was like, I've got time today. I'll make time to deal with you. So I was like, well, I did a separate video talking about it where I was like, well, you're saying that I have this black card, but the black card only exists in the face of white supremacy. Therefore, you are the issuer, you are the ratifier, and you are the distributor of this card. If you don't want me to have this quote unquote race card that I can pull out at any time that you perceive that I have, which I don't believe exists, then you should be my ally in challenging white supremacy. Because if white supremacy didn't exist, I wouldn't have this power that you perceive me to have, right? And he couldn't come back to anything. And it was like, as
mm,
soon as you come with a well-reasoned argument, people don't want to hear it. And I think more often than no, it's because they know that their opinion is wrong. It's just easier to blame somebody that the low-hanging fruit than it is to actually challenge those who are making the decisions. It's like the bully in school who would, the weaker bully in school who would always pick on the kid that he knows he could beat rather than someone who's his own size. It's literally that mentality when you overstand it. And yeah, it really troubles me that, you know, information has never been as accessible as it is right now. And so many people are just scared to challenge their own belief systems and just takes the diatribes that they take in on Facebook. And it's scary that, you know, we're easily whipped up into these frenzies rather than actually just sitting down with each other and reasoning. You know, we're from different backgrounds and we're sat here chopping it up, talking about our heritages. And it's fascinating. I'm learning way more about Irish history that I didn't know because the British school system fails Jamaican culture, but it also fails Irish culture and heritage as well because we're not taught about the Troubles and we're not taught about, you know, the segregation that exists of Protestants and Catholics. And so, yeah, more conversation is needed, but people are afraid to challenge their own belief systems. And it's stupid because there's no growth unless you do that.
yeah, that's it. And it's comfortable.
Yeah.
Like for me as a white middle class person, the world is great for me. Like
Mm,
it's fab. So I can say nothing. I'll be comfortable. I want it to stay the way it is. But then that kind of feeds into character as well.
mm.
Does it feed into intelligence or is that kind of tapping into classism?
Yes and no. I think that I feel like, let me be careful of what I say here. I feel that it is known that intelligent people will take their freedom. So on both sides, there are people who are wanting to take their freedom. So there is intelligence that exists, but also intelligent people have this pursuit of generating new knowledge and knowing that there needs to be some sort of discourse that exists there. And there are brave academics who want to stay, who want to challenge their perspectives and learn. So like one of my friends is doing a whole PhD about unlearning whiteness. I'll connect you with her because I think you two will get on. I'm making a film with her, well, I'll talk to you about in a little bit. But there's also then academics who are really rooted in their theory and they have their perspective and their worldview and that's what they want to stay in. And I feel like it's those two voices. So there is intelligence on both sides. It's just about whether you have a growth mindset or not. Do you want to challenge and get to the root of this issue? Or are you happy to just say, this is the issue and this is my belief and I'm just going to stay over here and not do with anything because it's not for me to fix this. You know, I have my own issues and it's that. And I think that society's been so conditioned to, I guess, not care about the pursuit of other people's, partially because of social media flooding us with images of like famine, war, which is important, but flooding us with so much, it's hard to care about everything. I empathize with some people on that side, even though there's privilege that exists in that sentiment. But then also, it's like people are wanting to protect what they have in a time where they have very little. And so it's about framing the need to have these conversations and to understand that we need to come together. And that's the only way that we'll be able to challenge inequality, challenge the standard of living crisis, challenge the financial inequality that exists with the people not being able to buy houses or get on the ladder, and just make I guess like a best, I guess it's idealistic at best, but make a fairer like standard of living for all people, regardless of color, race, gender, sexual orientation, or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. So tell me about your upbringing in terms of creativity, storytelling. Like, was that always present?
Yeah, so my dad was an old sound boy, so like he used to play with a sound system growing up and used to do some DJing. So DJing in Jamaican heritage doesn't mean the traditional DJing behind the deck, but it's more the role of an MC, so chatting over the rhythms them. And then my mother was a singer in a band when she was very young. So like I grew up around music. My granddad's family has lots of different musicians and singers in it, and my dad's family also has that. So creativity was something that I was always around. And naturally, as like a shy, introverted kid, I guess I was directed towards that path because I guess like music gave me a vessel to kind of say things that I guess I was a bit more uncomfortable with saying out loud because I was shy. Like it was interesting a few years ago, my mum, because she's a bit of a geek and she saved all of like my school reports and stuff and she gave them me. I was like, what the hell am I supposed to do with these? And she was like, read them. And it's like literally I went back through and as young as like reception, which I don't know if it's the same in Ireland, but that's like you're literally like toddler stages. Music was the one thing that I showed an aptitude for throughout my schooling. And it was like she was like, look, that's been within you from when you were a kid. And yeah, she was like a big driver of me being in music. Like at 11, she made me play an instrument, so I learned the drums, and then just really seeing that this was a space for me to be. So I think, yeah, the creativity and expression has always been something that's been important to my family and then also been directed to me. But even beyond them, like my grandparents love music. Some of my earliest memories of my granddad were him playing records and singing, often out of tune, and like clapping his hands
Hmm.
and things like that. And like just talking to me about like the Scar records. He was really proud because in Jamaica he owned a bar and restaurant and he used to like one of his cousins was a famous singer and he used to bring him in and like have other musicians come in and play the bar, and he was just super proud of that connection of music. And I guess for them music reminded him and my grandma of home, and so I think it was natural reflecting while I'm saying this, but it was natural for me to find myself in music.
Hmm. Do you have a specific role model in music, or do you have a lot, or what does that look
Mm.
like?
What was my specific role model? I don't have a role model, but I have people that I really learn from how they conduct themselves. So like, artists like Chronix, like Kalissa, Choir, who's a mentor of mine. I really respect how he does business and his approach to songwriting. Like he taught me that, music starts with a conversation. And a lot of the times with some of the most powerful art that we've created, like it's literally just been us sat talking. And then he's like, that's the verse. And it's like just been a conversation. And then like we've then reflected. And yeah, like because our conversations are so poetic and full of life, that's literally the meaning of the music. So I'd say choir as well. But I also think like British MCs, so like ones that I've represented for the culture and told both sides of the story. So made it cool to be proud of your Black British heritage, but also talked about the problems and challenges with that. So like your Kanos, your Wretch 32s, your Bashies, taking it back to the 90s. You've got like the Ruthless Rap Assassins from Manchester. Trying to think who else, like your Rodney P's, your Black Twangs, your Genesis Elijahs. Yeah, there's a whole host of people who inspired me on this journey.
Hmm. And it's interesting. So one of your poems, Black Joy is Revolution. I actually love the illustration here because it's like, and maybe I misunderstood it, but where it says like, told you all we can swim. I think I kind of get where you're coming from there. I'm not black, obviously, but is that
Yeah.
like that assumption that like black people can't swim because of their bone density or
Yeah, like when we were in Jamaica, like we didn't really have many off days because it was just get up, go studio and create because we were there for 11 days. So I made the whole of the Homecoming album and the short film in 11 days. It was nuts. But we had one off day where there was one of the team members who came to Jamaica. His father passed and it was the anniversary of that while he was away. So we took that day off. So the morning we had a pool day. And it was funny, we were just enjoying ourselves, and it was like, yo, this is actually that's where the idea for that song came. And I took a picture and I on my phone and I put it on my story with that caption, and people started laughing. So then I guess it came full circle then when it came time to make the book. And obviously that photo had been taken by the photographer who was out there. I was like, yeah, this is something that's really cool and actually a cool moment to show that, happiness is revolution because so much time with making conscious music, there's a real focus on the intentionality of the message. I was literally talking with Choir about this yesterday, about how intentional we have to be with our words. And he was pushing me on this particular song. And it's like, that's really important. But then also, it's remembering that revolution can be joy, be it sitting and sharing laughter with family and showing positive messages of Black identity and heritage is still revolution because it's forcing people to challenge their beliefs and ideologies about a particular culture or heritage. And so, yeah, that poem and that illustration was kind of communicating that for those who know.
brilliant. So also there's a lot of nature kind of woven into your work specifically in Homecoming.
Mhm.
How do you or do you connect nature with your own cultural identity? How important it comes across in it that it is hugely important for you.
Mhm.
And yeah, keen to hear how that intertwines if it does.
Yeah, it is like one of the first. So when we went to Jamaica, we linked up with Choir at some hotel and we had this meeting about whether we were going to work together. And so it was really funny. My team was sat across the table, his team was sat across the table, and I didn't realize it at the time, but he was grilling me. So he was asking me about everything else but music. So like life, spirituality, family, relationships, love, how I carry myself as a human being, principles. And then the more I answered questions, the more his people around him kind of went off and did other things. And so my team left and it was just us and me and him. And then he was like, okay, I'll do the session. So me and the team are leaving to go back to our penthouse thing, and he's going wherever he was going. I think he was going studio. And the last thing he said to me was, take your shoes and socks off and ground yourself because the ancestors have a message for you. The next day was the Tough Gong studio session. And so I did that. I went out in the morning, took my shoes and socks off. There's a picture of it somewhere on my Instagram, and literally grounded my feet in the soil. And the whole poem that's Fields came to me. And that was the intro from the album. And from that, it was like, yo, like actually, heritage is more than just the people, it's also the place. There's a real people don't understand the power that Jamaica has. Like when you're there, there's a particular frequency that exists where there's just so much talent and creativity and love and openness that exists on this tiny little island that's given the world so much. I feel like the nature element of the Homecoming album was trying to really emphasize that my heritage is the people, but it's also the place because there's power within that. But we just don't recognize it or acknowledge it all the time.
Hmm. So is England and Jamaica both homecoming for you?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I used to think that England wasn't really my home. Well, it wasn't really my home. I guess like the people in positions of power like to tell me that it's not my home because of the messages that we're seeing right now. But it is, again, it's that resistance, right? Like I am both British and Jamaican, and both places are my home, even though one doesn't necessarily want me all the time. They're both my places and I have the right to be here. So I view both as my home.
Hmm. Tell me about being a black academic.
It's awful. Don't do it. So
Is
That's
it? Because I hear that it is. I love the work of Kahande Andres.
yeah, he's amazing.
He is amazing. Am I pronouncing his name right?
Kehinde.
Kahinde, right? Kahinde Andres. Thank you. I love his work, and what he talks about is incredible, and I wonder why he's still doing it. And then, so whenever I see black academics, I'm like, why did you choose this?
Yeah.
But someone has to do it to shift the narrative, don't they? But like,
Well, for me, naturally, as like I'm a bit of a geek. I love like challenging perspectives and reading the words of other people and thoughts and just trying to understand what life is, what makes us human. And so naturally, I found myself within the academy and just being within institutions. I just saw like bigotry you couldn't imagine, institutional racism that you couldn't imagine, but obviously packaged in not slurs, although there were slurs throughout my career. It was more like, oh, he's aggressive, or he's this, he's that, or maybe like consider how your hair makes you look and things like that.
still,
Yeah. And so it was like I walked away from the academy quite recently. I was like, I this no longer serves me. Because I went there because I love working with young people. Like outside of my artistry, I've always done like workshops and just tried to be around as many young people as possible because I just get fed by working with them. And there's a cool like I guess like exchange that happens. They challenge my perspective and make me know what's going on with young people, but at the same time they get something from me, and it's a cool working relationship. And yeah, so I was really sad to leave the academic work altogether, but I needed to do it to protect my own sanity. And there seems to be a movement amongst Black academics where this is happening. Like there is an amazing Manchester academic. I won't mention his name because I don't know if he wants me to talk about his career, but he was an amazing thought leader who walked away from an academic institution in the Northwest for the same reason. And some of my colleagues down in London have done the same. I also have some friends in Scotland who have done the same, just because you get to a certain level where you're challenging thoughts and you're trying to be radical in how you generate new knowledge, and the institution doesn't want to budge. And so the easiest thing it can do to dismiss you is focus on your identity and your lived experience. And then it's thinking about then also as Black creatives why we're relying on these institutions that were often set up, with the money from colonialism, that weren't set up to acknowledge our thoughts, our feelings, and our heritage. And actually, why aren't we concentrating on building our own? All a university is a group of human beings who pass a certain level of knowledge, who ratify that you've met that criteria. Why can't we do that on a community basis, owned by us, with thought leaders from our community, with our community spirituality, focus on well-being and heritage embedded throughout that would truly be radical. But we also know that systems within Britain would try and make that very difficult to happen. So a lot of people that I know that have left the academy have gone towards community work now, supporting like supplementary schools and things like that, because that's where the real resistance is. I'm actually making a short project about this at the moment called Black Academics to Fight for Equity in Higher Education. No one knows this, so I guess this is exclusive. We're
yeah,
filming with academics up and down the country, just finding out about their journey within academia. Like I said, I left academia in April, and I was really passionate about finding out other people's experiences because I found a Twitter back when I was on Twitter around October last year. I found an area called Black Academics where Black academics were just sharing their experiences in higher education, and I was like, "There's something in this." And then when I left the academic institution I was at, I was like, "This is what I want to focus on now. I want to like create something that shows and highlights this issue." And so, yeah, it's going quite well. I'm working with a filmmaker who's also doing their PhD that's related around critical whiteness. I'm working with my friend Alabi, who's the DOP on the project. So I'll send you some of the rough cuts of the episode so you can see it. But yeah, it's all around highlighting the challenges that exist within academic institutions, but then also highlighting how creativity is often the safe space that we seek, and how that's a place of resistance while navigating these challenges.
yeah. My God, it sounds incredible.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Whenever you were a child, could you imagine that you would have been doing this work?
No, like it's really weird. So I think as a child, I often thought about being creative. Like I didn't see myself as someone that like would wear a suit and tie every day because I hate wearing suits anyway. It's just not me. So I was like, I can't see myself being in any role that was like that. I've always kind of been interested in like naturally curious, like just finding out about people. And so I think like being a musician and being a creative has always been something that I knew that I wanted to do, but I didn't know it would take this kind of shape or form of being like a dub poet, an artist, and also, I guess now a filmmaker.
Mm. And so, what advice, because there are expectations for, everyone, but
Hmm.
what advice would you give to young Black boys, young Black people, or global majority people about identity and about themselves?
Don't listen to anyone. You are who you are. You're standing on the shoulders of the ancestors who came before you. There is wisdom, there is heritage, there is wisdom and there is power in who you are. You just need to tap into it to see it. Don't take advice from people you wouldn't trade places with, and just focus on listening to your inner voice. You know deep down who you are and what your purpose is supposed to be. You just have to give yourself enough space and enough silence to actually listen to that inner voice. Focus on that. Don't get distracted by the outside things where people want to pull you into directions or put you in boxes that they think that you should fit to meet what society deems as success. Do what makes you happy as well. That would be my advice.
Amazing. And what would you like your legacy to be?
What would like my legacy to be? I guess like, hmm, I guess music that challenged perspectives. Like a lot of my fan base, particularly for dub poetry, which went mad. Like we sold out the 100 vinyls in like a weekend or whatever. Like, has is quite honestly like white British between age of 25 to up to I think it's like 40. I want to say 45. I checked on Spotify the other day. And like that means that the music that I'm creating that's challenging the system, like there is a whole group of people that understand that and want to see this change. And I think that I want my legacy to be feeding that, feeding the energy of those people who want to challenge the system and want to make society fairer for all. That's what I want my legacy to be.
Amazing. And what book changed your life?
The autobiography of Malcolm X at the age of 13 changed my life. Then in my later years, I read a book called Homecoming, which is, let me just Google it. I think it's by John Bradshaw. I didn't read it. I read it actually after I came back from Jamaica.
Mm.
But his work, he's a psychologist, and it's all about healing your inner child. So much of what we deal with as global majority people um impacts us in our younger years, and we don't get to really process it or unpick it, and it shows up in different ways in our adulthood. And that book was a really cool one to just identify like some of the traumas of racism that we carry with us. It's not specifically about race, it's about inner child work, but being able to make those connections yourself was really empowering, and then you can obviously change some of the things that you walk with, which is cool.
Mm, amazing. It sounds like you have so much going on. And I really hope that there's so much space for your work here in across the island of Ireland. So I'm sure at some point we'll meet in person.
Yeah, I love that.
Um, but yeah, thank you so much for coming on. So people can find you on Instagram, on TikTok. Are you still on X?
No, I come off X.
Everyone's left
I couldn't
it.
deal with it, man. Like every time I'd open it, there'd just be something that would annoy me, so I had to jump off.
It feels great being off. I left X in May 2024 as a part of a social media break just for a couple of weeks and I never went back. And honestly, I mean, there's enough haters on TikTok.
Mm.
That's like, yeah, X just got a little bit out of hand. But yeah, thank you so much. So your book will be available on our website at some point, hopefully soon, but we can
Yeah.
we can chat about that. And thank you so much for all your work that you do. You definitely had an impact on my son, and I know that you'll have an impact on our communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Orla. Thank you for all the great work that you do as well. Like, what you're doing isn't easy. Trying to change perspectives in Ireland, it must be quite heavy, but the work that you do is appreciated. And, it's great to see allies like you fighting the good fight. So thanks to you as well. You're doing something that's really important, and I hope that you see that.
Thank you so much.